Welcome everybody to the Return to God Now Prayer Apostolate. This is the first interview for our new apostolate, which started in the summer of 2020. With me is the President Emeritus of Fontbonne University and author of Golden Nuggets, Wisdom from Above and Below the Heavens. He is Dennis C. Golden. Welcome.
Thank you, Paul, very much. It's an honor to be with you this morning.
Now, you go by Denny, right? Because I don't want to assume anything. Is that all right? I
That's
call
fine.
you Denny?
Yes, preferable and fine. Yes, sir.
Our guest has a myriad of life experiences. I'm only going to give you a sliver of it as I read his bio. Denny grew up in Queens, New York City. He attended Holy Cross High School. Subsequently, he earned his undergraduate degree at the College of the Holy Cross, his master's from Assumption College, and his doctorate from Boston College. Because he was an outstanding collegiate football player, Denny was drafted by the Dallas Cowboys in 1963. But, in the spirit of Robert Frost, he took the road less traveled, and that made all the difference. That road was to bypass the opportunity to play professional football in the NFL, to serve the United States of America as a Marine Corps officer from 1963 to 1966. After Denny received his honorable discharge from the Marine Corps, he began a servant leader 48-year career in higher education with ever-increasing responsibilities at the College of the Holy Cross, Framingham State University, Duquesne University, the University of Louisville, and Fontbonne University. He also rendered service as the president of NASPA, the National Association of Student Personnel Administrators, and as the chairperson of ACCU, the Association of Catholic Colleges and Universities. When Denny retired in 2014, he really never did retire, did you?
No, I failed retirement, Paul.
He and his wife Monica relocated from St. Louis, Missouri, here to Huntersville, North Carolina. They have 3 adult children, 9 grandchildren, and in June of this year, they will celebrate 57 years of holy matrimony. Once retired, perhaps more than ever before, Denny realized that he is a Christian under construction, whose personal duty is to be the best person that he can be, to seek redemption and to hopefully earn eternal salvation in heaven. The what that drives Denny is rooted in his belief in the gospel message of Jesus Christ and his understanding that he has an obligation to obey God's commandments and serve others to the best of his ability. The why that drives Denny is the reality and danger of unrestrained secularism and a self-imposed commitment to be a 21st century crusader for Christ, who is dedicated to doing the more in the spirit of the new evangelization. So in 2014 and 15, Denny heard God's call to write it down. He responded with his yes, his fiat, and the result was this wonderful book, Golden Nuggets. I'm going to go through some of the book in a little bit. This book is a must-read for faith seekers of all ages who have both the humility and the courage to dig deep and discover the God-given gold nuggets in their lives. So Denny, let's jump right into the book. There is a chapter entitled, Not a Cradle Catholic. Can you share a little bit about that with us?
Well, Paul, everybody has their roots, and mine were being the son of a Russian Jewish father and an Irish-Italian mother. In my early years, I never saw the inside of a synagogue nor a Catholic church, or any church for that matter. Yes, I was a good athlete in my youth and was blessed to continue along that pathway in high school, college, and beyond. But in my youth, we were playing basketball with other other friends in the street, and then they invited me to play for their church, which was a Protestant church. And I loved it. It was great. Made friendships, and we even had Bible lessons before or after the various games. So at one point in time, we made it to the playoffs, and the coach said to us, "You need to be here early next week because we have a ride to get to the game." And that afternoon, I told my mother the day after the game, I said, "Mom, we got to eat early because I've got to get over to church first because we're doing Bible lessons before the game, not after the game." And she looked at me and she said, "You're taking Bible lessons. Do you like them?" I said, "Yes, I do." And she said, "Well, good. I'll feed you. Good luck in the game." I forget if we won or lost the game. That's irrelevant. But what is not irrelevant is the next day I came home from public elementary school. My mother was waiting for me. I went to take my jacket off and run out and play. And she said, "Not so fast. We're going for a ride." So we hopped in the car. We drove over to Blessed Sacrament Church in Bayside, Long Island. The next thing I know, I'm in Father Masterson's office with my mother saying, "Father Masterson, I've been away from the church for a few years. This is my son, Dennis. I want him to become a Catholic." So I was in elementary school at that time, and then I went through a speed course of prayers, confession, First Communion, confirmation, sort of in walk time. And I've been trying to be a devout Catholic ever since. But no, I was not a cradle Catholic.
So your mom had a huge influence, obviously,
Absolutely.
from that day on. Denny, talk to us a little bit about Holy Cross High School. I know we've spoken previously. That experience was significant in your life, and just share with the audience listening, watching, how the brothers helped you during that time.
Their assistance is inestimable. When we were the first class in that high school. We entered in 1955, first graduating class in 1959. At that time, the brothers actually lived in the high school building on the 4th floor. They had their own rooms there. That was off limits for us. We never went up there, obviously. And they were totally committed to everything we needed to do, be it intellectual, social, developmental, psychological, career advice, and so forth. But there's an antecedent to that, Paul. I went to public elementary school, as I mentioned previously. I didn't know anything about Catholic high schools. I wanted to go to Bayside High School with my so-called running buddies. And my mother said, "I want you to take the test for Holy Cross High School." Now, you mentioned, I have an undergraduate degree from Holy Cross, a master's degree from Assumption, a doctorate from Boston College, and I've also done postdoctoral work at Harvard a couple times. So, fact of the matter is, when I look back in 1955, I failed the entrance exam to that high school. My mother, unbeknownst to me, went to the brothers and pleaded my case. They gave me a conditional acceptance to the school, and then the light bulb went off about learning, faith, reason, doing, and so forth. I wouldn't be sitting here today if it was not for the Brothers of Holy Cross and their lay partners. And as fate would have it, I'm now on that high school board in New York City, and I'm also a member of the Board of Governors of the fairly new and powerfully established Holy Cross Institute, which is run out of St. Edward's University in Austin, Texas. And I had an hour and a half Zoom session with them this past week. So
Wow.
that lives on. That charism lives on. Fostered by Blessed Basil Moreau.
So you were a good student athlete, obviously, if you got drafted by the Dallas Cowboys. So after high school, why did you choose to attend the College of the Holy Cross? I mean, presumably you could have gotten to other colleges where your athletic skills could have been more on display. Help us, what made you choose going to the College of the Holy Cross?
Well, without going into specific names, I went to an Ivy League university for a visit. I went to an ACC school, for a visit. I went out to the Midwest for a visit, and I wasn't sure where I was going to go. However, I had met Monica as a sophomore in high school. Her dad was a Holy Cross graduate. Beautiful person, beautiful man. I admired Mr. Lennon very much, and I said to myself, the graduates from Holy Cross that I had met, the recruiters, I'm not only talking football recruiters, I'm talking alumni. They had a very powerful impact on me as a 17-year-old kid. They're really good people, and the more I thought about it, I said, I like Holy Cross. I like the collegiate environment, and I want to be taught by the Jesuits. So this one will make you smile. My dad went to the 8th grade. My mom went to the 8th grade. They had no high school diplomas, no college education. My dad worked in a gas station. He came home one night. I was sitting in his little room there, and he said, "How you doing?" I said, "I'm fine." This is the first time he ever intervened in anything to do with my college choices. And he said, "Don't you have to make a college choice soon?" I said, "Yeah, I do." He said, "What are all those letters on your bed?" I said, "Those are from various coaches at various institutions." And he looked at me and said, "You have one from Holy Cross?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Isn't that where Monica's father went to school?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Let me just see the other letters for a minute." I handed it to him, took them, put them in the trash can, and he said, "This is where you're going to college." That's how parental guidance works sometimes.
Yeah, from your mom's story about just taking you down there to what your dad, so they were, in their beliefs, they were definitive, and
Yep,
there was no room for interpretation. I want to go back to the book.
Yep.
Again. There is a chapter called Guardian Angel, and when I hear those two words, always makes me want to know more about it. So why did you tell us a bit about that?
Well, the starting point, you can believe that you're a person with a soul, or a soul with a personage. There's a blend there. And I was thinking about that when I was trying to write the Guardian Angel chapter. If you look on Siri and put in 2 words, Bayside Zombies, you will see what was going on the west side of my town, my community, when we were growing up.
Bayside Zombies. Okay.
Not easy, not tough, but most of them were 5, 6, 7 years older than we were as young teenagers. But I knew their younger brothers and played basketball with them and baseball and so forth. I'm not going to speak much more about that organization, but we were told by the police athletic league and many people to stay clear, okay? My mother used to say, be careful. But there was one among them who I was very friendly with, a very good young man. I'm just going to give his first name, John. And John and I maintained our friendship, although he was with that organization and he was with the other high school. One night, a phone call came, and he said, "Hey, Denny, I'd like to come over and see you. Got a couple of guys in the car, we're just going to go for a ride. We'd like you to join us." Very polite and so forth. He was my size. He was not a small fellow. So he came in, very polite to my mother. And I said, "Mom, I'll see you later." And just as I'm walking out the door, she says, "Be careful." I said, "I understand." The car was outside. It was a winter night, as I recall. And the engine was vroom, vroom, vroom. 2 other fellows were in the car. I knew them both. I wasn't really friendly with both of them. "All right, hop in, let's go. We've got a couple packets and 6 packs of beer. We're going for a ride." I opened the door. right-hand side, rear of the car, went to step in. The next thing I knew, I'm back on the curb. I didn't think that through. I ended up back on the curb. And they're encouraging, get in the car, let's go. No, I'm not going. And some words were exchanged. They weren't happy that I wasn't going. And about a minute later, they sped off. And I went back up the steps into the apartment, opened the door. My mother said, what are you doing back here? I thought you left. I said, I decided not to go. That chapter in this book, I remember the wording. I said, sometime thereafter. I can't remember if it was the day after or how soon after. My mom said, did you read the paper today? I said, no, not yet. She says, read about your friends. I said, well, no. They drank their beer. They went out 2 or 3 towns beyond where we lived, just Nassau County, broke into a supermarket. An off-duty police officer saw their car out front of the supermarket. He went in to investigate. The silent alarm had already gone off, and the uniformed police were on their way there. And when he went in and asked them, hey, what are you guys doing here? One of these guys had a rifle, and he killed the police officer. My thought on it is, in faith, that it was my guardian angel to back me out of that car.
Oh.
The devil never sleeps. The devil is always in pursuit of a person's eternal soul. Had I gone and been in that car, even if I sat out in the car, never went in, there's no way I wouldn't have gone to prison.
You would have been
just like
implicated with them.
I would have been accessory before the fact. So that's guardian angel, and that's the toughest one. Now, on a slightly lighter note regarding that, Paul, I angst over writing that chapter. And I have this Bible with me today for a reason, because it's annotated like this book. And I was going through great strain regarding that particular chapter. Monica and I were on a trip up to St. Louis. We stopped 9:30 at night to get a hamburger and a cup of coffee, just so I could finish the ride. I was sitting there like you and I are sitting right now. All of a sudden, this figure appears right here in bib overalls with a farmer's hat on. And he looks at us and he goes, how you all doing? And I looked at Monica like, who is this? And he says, you all look like God-fearing people. Are you God-fearing people? I'm saying, who is this guy? So I said, yeah, we're God-fearing people. And he goes, you all read the Bible? And I was in the process of reading the Bible from cover to cover at that point. This is 4 years ago. And I said, yes, I'm doing that right now. He said, you know what Bible stands for, don't you? And I'm ready to say the inspired word of God, so on and so forth. And he goes, basic information before leaving Earth. Think about that. I looked at Monica, she looked at me, and this guy was gone, vanished, absolutely vanished. And I view that as from God to me to write that chapter and get it in this book.
Wow. Okay.
Keep going, Paul.
I guess I was intrigued by some of the titles of your chapters, and when one's intrigued, one normally investigates further. Another chapter entitled EIWP-GP. Now, in this world of acronyms, I tried thinking, what is this? So help us. What's that all about? EIWP-GP.
That's interesting. Well, you mentioned I'm President Emeritus of Fontbonne University. We had a lot of great faculty at Fontbonne University. One in particular was Dr. Mary Abkemeyer. And Dr. Abkemeyer was introducing me to some new international students one day. They were standing by my car, and my license plate was the IWP-GP. And there's 10 or 12 of these international students, and I greeted every one of them. The last person, he's looking at the license plate like this. I go, "Oh, how you doing?" He says, "Oh, excuse me," I'm all nervous. I said, "Are you trying to figure out the license plate, what it means?" He goes, "Yes, I am." And Dr. Akamaya piped up and she winked at me and she said, "Where our president's concerned, it does not stand for expert in word processing." So, what does it stand for?
What does it stand for?
Short version is, we have a very dear friend who has a PhD in interventionist psychology. She's a great person. Her name is Dr. Mary Stoner. She and her husband Ed Stoner, an attorney, are very, very good friends of ours. Ed was the outstanding attorney, external attorney for Duquesne University when I was in Pittsburgh. We were very closely together. So we're at a dinner party one night at their house with 2 or 3 other couples. No cell phones in those days and so forth. So the phone rang and Mary walks about 4 feet away and picks up the phone. And we can tell by her tone and the look on her face, something serious is going on. And she goes, "Okay, I understand. Right. Call me tomorrow morning for sure, okay?" And then, in her inimitable style, she says, "Oh, who would like more?" That happened twice. And the third time the phone rang, her expression was different. She said, "That is great news. Okay. Thank you. You're doing a terrific job with that person. Yes, I'll be there." And she hung up the phone with this great sigh of relief. And her husband looked across the table and said, "Mary, is that an EIWPGP?" And she goes, "Yes, it was, Ed." And we're looking at each other like,
What are they talking
what are they talking about? So prior to dessert, someone said, "Mary, you were talking in code with Ed. We don't want to be intrusive, but what does EIWPGP stand for?" She goes, "Oh, think about the Bible. Everything is working perfectly. God's plan, not our plan." EIWPGP, that's what it stands for. Everything is working perfectly, God's plan.
God's plan.
And in terms of my faith, I've always tried to put trust in God because where I've gone to school, where I was in the military, my decisions about yes to the NFL or another course of action, and throughout my 48 years in higher education, in my darkest hours, that always happened. God's plan. And it was the better plan.
Denny, share with us some situations in your life where you needed to turn to God. You needed to turn to prayer. Maybe some difficult situations.
Well, I think, going back to Guardian Angel for a moment, that taught me that when the devil starts to work on you, the evil one works on you, you feel it and you know it. And the way to address it is to be humble and say, "Jesus, help me. Jesus, please help me." Because if you're not humble enough to do that, or serious enough to do it,
Just taking that down.
you're not going to make it, because the devil never sleeps. What else? When I face tough decisions, I think about dare to dream about the better things in life, and that we all have an alpha and an omega, a birth and a death. When you look at a tombstone, there's a little thing in between them called a dash. And that's in that book as well, the dash. And the question is, how do you use your time on earth? And I don't even need to go through a litany of hard times. I've had a barrage of them in my life. But I always try to think back to a certain amount of time to do good or not to do good. And I always turn to God and to the Blessed Mother at those times to give me the insight, the guidance, the courage to go on. There's a book in here about the university presidency and all the things that the president has to deal with, and so on and so forth. Some of the hardest things you do in that position is trying to keep the right course of action. A very dear friend of mine, Donna Carroll, who's the president of Dominican University, boils it all down to three things: absorb chaos, give back calm, and provide hope. So, Donna, thank you again. But these things that happen, okay, if you don't have a faith foundation, if you don't trust in God, if you don't, as your organization is doing, returning to God and make it clear, convincing, compassionate, courageous, then we're all just spinning. All we're doing, but we don't know why we're doing what we're doing. And a lot of call downs on our time come because of the secular world, which is a means to an end. But the ultimate means to the end is save your immortal soul.
So have faith in God and pray. That reminds me of the story you shared with me about a young man in a hospital. Can you share that with our audience, please?
Take a deep breath on this one. It was mid to late 1980s. At the time, I was the Vice President for Student Affairs at Duquesne University in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And certain social groups and certain fraternities went through hazing procedures and so forth. And I constantly warned them against it. I said, someday something difficult is going to happen, and you're not going to like the results. Well, there's a park in the greater city of Pittsburgh called Frick Park. It's over near the University of Pittsburgh and CMU. And this group went up to Frick Park. There was a young candidate for their group. Yes, he had some alcohol, too much alcohol, and a bunch of them did as well. They realized at a certain point that they had to get out of that park and get back to a safe zone. So they drove back toward the campus. Duquesne's directly across the street from the Catholic hospital. And they were going to take him to a dormitory, give him a cold shower, and sober him up. One person in the car with this young man very, very strongly urged that they take this young man to the hospital, not to the dormitory. I didn't know any of this was going on. I found out all this later. That young man was my eldest son, Patrick, who did the right thing. Phone rang at home. I get a call from the hospital. I get a call from the police that a Duquesne student's in the hospital, in the emergency room. Serious danger. Get there as soon as possible. I get dressed. My wife's an RN. We drove right into the city of Pittsburgh, got to the hospital, walked in. The waiting room's filled with Duquesne students, and they all came up to me talking to me, and I said, no, not now. I got to get into the emergency. The doctor's beckoning me in. So, and I went, and the doctor looked at me, and I looked at the doctor, and he said, Dr. Golden, I think it's too late. He's gone. And he's laid out on the table, on the sheet, bright lights over his head. I look at the monitor, nothing's happening. This all happened, Paul, in about 3 minutes or less from the time I got to the hospital till I was in there. Nurses are there, emergency people are there, 2 or 3 doctors are there. And I said, well, I don't think he's gone yet. I'd like not to believe that he is. So let's pray. We held hands. I said the Our Father, the Hail Mary, glory be. Took a deep breath, prayed for him by name, which I won't put on the table this meeting, for this interview. I looked up. All of a sudden, the monitor went blip, 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 blip. The doctors are looking at the heart monitor and looking at each other. He came back to life. The power of prayer.
And faith. You didn't just say that. You believed that God could do anything. And in that instant, he wasn't ready for this young man. Wow. We can keep going on and on. Denny, you're an amazing storyteller. Your life experiences. I think we're nearing the time we have together. One last thing. Who doesn't like to hear a good story? Along the lines of prayer and turning to God when you need Him. 2 words I'm going to mention. Describe that for me, and then we'll go our separate ways for now. Times Square. It's in New York City.
It's usually a pretty big, busy place, but it hasn't been since COVID. But on a particular summer evening, August 1966, I was in Times Square. I know what you want me to share. But antecedent to driving to Times Square, I was at Randall's Island underneath the Triborough Bridge. There's a football stadium there. And it was my second go around with professional football, okay? Earlier that summer, while I was still on active duty in the Marine Corps, General Hochmuth, God rest his soul, was the only Marine general we lost in Vietnam. We became friends, even though I was just a first lieutenant. He was a 2-star general, Major General, beautiful man. He gave me permission to go and try out with the Boston Patriots. And I say the Boston Patriots, that's before they were the New England Patriots. And I had a good summer tryout, everything went well. But certain things happened, which I'm not going to go into, and that's part of what takes place. So when I left the Boston training camp, I was driving down to Worcester and stopped at Holy Cross. That led to certain things, and then 2 days later, I got a phone call from a fellow who has a very prominent name in the NFL, Andy Robustelli. He called my house and he said, "Dennis, we have film on you. We know you can play at this level. Come down to Randall's Island. If you want to see us, I'm going to give you a tryout. We have one more scrimmage coming up, and I know you're ready to play, so come down." So I did. After the scrimmage, Andy offered me a contract. I would have been with his team, like the scout team, he said about 2 weeks, and then he said, "We're going to move you up to Yankee Stadium. We're a New York guy." And I lit up like a Christmas tree. I said, "Are you kidding? Playing for the New York Giants, my hometown? Let's go." So I then left, drove into Manhattan from Randall's Island. I don't know what made me do it to this day, but I just wanted to be there. I wanted to see life. And I called Monica, no cell phones, and she said, "Where are you?" I said, "I'm in Times Square, 42nd Street. She said, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yeah, I'm okay." "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm just going to have one beer and then I'm coming home." I had the one beer. I stood on Times Square, 42nd Street. Gorgeous August evening. The stars are out. And I prayed. I stood at Times Square, 42nd, and prayed for God's guidance to either sign the contract or begin my career, which ended up being a 48-year career in higher education. As I'm standing there, a gentleman came up behind me, tapped me on the shoulder, and because I'm playing football, you know, one of these deals, says, "Relax." It's a big Irish cop. He said, "You okay?" I said, "Yes, sir, I am." He said, "You've been standing here like for 20 minutes, looking up and doing this and looking up. What are you doing?" I said, "I'm praying, trying to make a decision." He goes, "You're telling me you're standing on Times Square in 42nd Street praying?" He says, "I think I've heard everything after 30 years in the police force, but never that one." I said, "Yes, sir, that's the truth." So those prayers led me to take a job, my first job in higher ed, at my alma mater, Holy Cross, which was offered to me by Father Charles Dunn, S.J., who is now 96 years old.
Wow.
And is clear as a bell intellectually, and I speak to him frequently. That's Times Square, Paul.
Well, I wish we had more time, but I think that'll take us to the end of this. Denny, I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation and just hearing again your faith, your trust, what led you to write this book. Again, Golden Nuggets, Wisdom from Above and Below the Heavens, Dr. Dennis C. Golden. I want to thank you, Denny. This is the very first interview in the Return to God Now apostolate, one that will go down in the annals of history. Fantastic interview. Denny, I look forward to the next time you and I can spend some time together, but thank you for giving us time this morning.
You're very welcome, Paul. Blessings to you and those with whom you're working, because your group is doing evangelization, new evangelization, and it's been told, and no one less than Bishop Fulton J. Sheen said back in the 1970s that the era of Christendom, in its true sense of the word, will not last forever, but the era of Christianity and new evangelization is what's needed. That's exactly what you gentlemen and friends are doing. God bless you.
Thank you. Well, that's all for now. God bless you.